Hey, this is Ryan Jones with Serverless Guru. In this video, we're going to be covering Serverless S3 Remover. So in this series of videos, we've been covering serverless plugins, which is a way for the open source community to contribute and make the serverless framework better. So moving into this one's interesting because it comes up a lot and it's pretty easy to handle. So I haven't actually used this in any projects, but we've ran into issues where because we didn't have this, we had to take special precaution and we had to kind of like write our own scripts and do things like that, or manually go in and delete it, which can be kind of annoying and troublesome. So the whole idea behind it is that every time that you do a deployment of an S3 bucket, you can't delete it unless all the stuff inside of the bucket is deleted, right? And so this can be frustrating because let's say the data inside the S3 bucket is temporary. You don't care about the data inside of it. There's no real feature that's built in where you can basically say, okay, delete this, right? So basically this Serverless S3 Remover plugin allows you to clear away the bucket first, so it makes it empty, and then you're able to actually remove it. So it's actually really useful. So what we can do to actually set this up is first we're going to create a serverless project. So if you switch over to your terminal, and then go to whatever directory you're going to make the project in. We could do sls create -- template aws -node.js -- and we'll call this one serverless S3. Okay, so now that we have our boilerplate, let's go ahead and cd into that repository, or into that directory, the serverless S3 remover, and then let's go ahead and open that in Atom. Okay, so we have our normal files here. We have our serverless.yaml. Once again, we're going to take out all of this boilerplate comments, and instead of these comments, we're going to basically clean it up so that it's easier to read and maintain. Cool. There we go. So not too many lines, just like one function declared, runtime, the provider we're using is AWS. One thing about the serverless framework is it does support multiple cloud providers. So you could use AWS or Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure. I think now they have Kubernetes because they have a serverless platform with like their own cloud functions. So all these different things are supported through the serverless framework. And a lot of them were built through the companies that have that. They wanted to integrate it into the serverless framework so that they could actually get more people using it. So really cool features and new stuff coming out. And 2 years from now, I can't even imagine all the new stuff that's going to be out there for you to use with the serverless environment. So let's go ahead and jump in. So just like the other videos, we're going to create a section called plugins, and we're going to add the serverless S3 remover. And then we're also going to need to init this and create and basically download the npm package, serverless S3 remover. So now that we have npm init ran, we can run the npm i -- save and grab serverless remover. The I is shorthand for install. Okay, so it looks like yeah, this is similar to the other video, which is kind of funny. So let me go ahead and I'm going to just do this quickly. So I'm going to open up Finder. Let me do this actually. Open in Finder. So what's basically happening is that it's saying we can't have it named the same way. This is easier if I just do it like this. So if this ever does come up, you can just go to the package.json, say like something like that. Try that again. Okay, there we go. Basically, the npm package is conflicting with the actual dependency that's installing. So all you have to do is just add something there. You don't have to change your folder names or anything like that. We may have done that in the past video, but there's actually an easier way of going about that. So now that we have this installed, we can actually add in the stuff related to serverless S3 remover. Go ahead and add that into our custom section, which we haven't created yet. Custom remover buckets, and we'll say, we'll say my bucket. Let's actually make this more dynamic. So let's do self-service dash my bucket. Cool. So this self-service is going to refer to serverless S3 remover. And then what we need to do is we actually need to create the actual bucket itself. So let's go ahead and open up. We're going to search for AWS Cloudformation S3 buckets. It's actually a serverless way of doing this, so let's actually look at both. Inside the serverless S3, pretty sure we could actually create this. Yeah, there we go. So we will just copy this here, and we should be good to go to add this in. So we're adding a resources section, and then resources and S3 bucket photos. So we'll call this S3 bucket, and we're giving it a type of AWS S3 bucket, properties, bucket name. This is where we're actually going to change it to match the above. So we can just copy this, and there we go. Self-service my bucket. So now what we should be able to do, we'll leave everything else the same. So this will deploy to dev and US East 1. We can run SLS deploy dash stage dev. Actually, we don't need to do that. -v. So what's going to happen is it should create the S3 bucket called serverless S3 remover my bucket, and then when we go to remove it, after we add some files in, it should basically empty it first and then remove it, and we should get through the process. And so if that's working correctly, then we know that the serverless S3 remover plugin is working correctly. What we can actually do is we can kind of force this to happen. So when we actually go to deploy it and then remove it, first we can disable the actual plugin and then see if it will let us actually remove the bucket without it, and then we can add the plugin in and see if it'll let us delete it. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually upload a file as well. So let me go ahead and add, you can just maybe jump from here and just grab the serverless.yaml. By default, the serverless framework has enough permissions to actually tear down the stack. So in those situations, when it actually creates a serverless deployment bucket for you, it has permission to tear that down. It just doesn't have permission for any buckets that you create on your own. Yeah, so cool. So we're in. Go ahead and switch over to the AWS console, and then let's go to S3. Cool. And let's go ahead and grab the serverless remover bucket, and let's upload some files. So what I'm going to do is upload, let's say upload intro. Yeah. Grab some of these, open, upload. So these are just some photos, some screenshots from an article that I wrote. So we're just going to upload these. And so now they should have content inside of it, and this is fine. So let's go ahead and disable the plugin. We're going to comment this out, comment out remover. And now what we're going to do is try to remove this. So as you can see here, we got delete failed on the S3 bucket. So if we go over to AWS and we search for Cloudformation, so inside of Cloudformation, we can see delete failed, and we can go inside and look at the events. So it looks like the bucket you tried to delete is not empty, right? So that's not good. This is what we were expecting to happen though. So we can kind of move past this and jump over here. Okay, so same message. Now what we can do is we can uncomment this, uncomment, and now let's try to run this. It looks like we got a serverless error. The specified bucket does not exist. Go switch over to Cloudformation, look what's happening. Okay, so let's go ahead and delete this. And what we'll do is we'll redeploy. So what I'm doing is I'm manually deleting the stack right now. Sometimes it can kind of get into a state of where it's saying delete failed. It's not actually retrying the remove. So this is interesting in the fact that it's saying that this does not exist. So I'm curious if we went to the S3 console, and it may be too late now, if our bucket still is there. So our bucket still persists, but the stuff inside of the bucket is not there. So it did actually remove it. It's just saying that the bucket that we're looking for does not exist. I think that's just a conflict in how we actually set that up. So one thing that we can do is let's look at the stack detail in Cloudformation. So we have delete complete. Let's refresh this. Looks like we still have this bucket here. Let's go ahead and delete it. And this is why this video is even being created, because these S3 buckets can be really tricky to work with. So now that that's deleted and our Cloudformation stack is gone, let's go ahead and go back and we'll clear this up and we'll do this deploy one more time. Let's jump back over to the documentation here. Yeah, so it automatically makes it empty before removing the stack, so all you have to run is serverless remove. This is an array value, so you can actually pass in all of your buckets and empty them out, which is good to note in case you had 3 or 4 or some unknown number. You can basically specify them in an array by just adding an extra dash there, and then specify the bucket name and keep going down that list. And then as you run serverless remove, it'll search for the bucket name and it will remove it. Okay, awesome. So let's go back. Let's go to the S3 console and look what we got created. We have our 2 buckets and we have Cloudformation create complete. Now let's run over here and run serverless remove -v. It looks like we got a failed serverless S3 remover. My bucket may not be empty. Getting all objects in S3 bucket, removing stack, and it says successfully removed. So we go over here, we can see that the stack is gone. Go to S3, we can see we have no buckets. So this is what a successful removal looks like. So as long as you have this stuff enabled and you don't do kind of the weird interaction that I just did where I disabled the plugin and then also I did some manual steps, this is a great way of yeah, kind of taking that out. So interesting though. So one thing that we did not do in this one is we did not add files. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll redeploy this and then we'll go into the S3 bucket and we'll add the files in and see if we have a similar result. Because my initial thought was, oh, this is happening because the Cloudformation or because the plugin stuff that we did manually was actually causing some conflict on the serverless framework side that was causing this delete fail to happen even after we enabled the plugin. But based on what just happened, it did work properly, but that's because the bucket was basically empty. So what we can test is we can see if we add files to it and then we try to run serverless remove with the plugin enabled, will it actually still remove it or not? So we switch over to the Cloudformation console, pretty close to getting create complete here, just updating the final bits. So we have update complete. So let's go over to S3. Here's our buckets. Go ahead and jump into one. Let's upload some files. There we go. Right, and we have our files populating now. Cool. Now we are ready to go. Let's go ahead and switch back over and try to run an serverless remove. See what happens. So far so good. Looks like it is getting through the delete, and it was actually able to delete the S3 bucket. This is great, and that is cleared out, and our serverless stacks is gone. So this is a successful use case, or basically successful use of the plugin Serverless S3 Remover to do something that is very common in your stacks, where you have an S3 bucket that you will want to use for maybe like image storage or something like that, and then you need to also maybe clear it out because maybe it's only temporary storage. Whatever that use case ends up being, obviously S3 can be more than photos, it could be files, it could be PDFs, binaries, it could be JSON, anything you want it to be. So in certain situations, you want your stack and your infrastructure to tear it out at the same time. One use case that I can think of is, like, let's say we were trying to populate S3 with some scripts, and those scripts were local. We don't actually care if it's persisting, so that's where we want the scripts to be taken down each time, because if we're pulling from that S3 bucket and grabbing those scripts, we want to be able to deploy everything. We want to deploy the Lambda that's looking at S3, pull the scripts in, and we want to be looking at yeah, basically, so that would be one use case there. Yeah, so awesome. Sorry about the little back and forth, but we did actually get to see some functionality on both ends. So that's kind of cool. If you do want to check out more of this, go ahead and go to the Serverless S3 Remover. We pretty much covered the bulk of it. I think there's one extra thing. It'll prompt you and ask you if you want to delete this or not. And that's pretty much it. So yeah, Serverless S3 Remover, great plugin, very useful. It only has 13 stars, but obviously I think it's great because this is something that I've ran into in multiple projects where we've come into this whole thing where it's like, oh, our S3 bucket is outside of our serverless frame or our serverless stack. So how do we actually like modify it and things like that? In those cases, we were actually trying to keep it and like have it persist, but it's one of those cases where once we started looking at, okay, so how would we bring it inside of our stack, and then we were having backups take place, this is where we run into issues with the basically the S3 bucket not being able to delete because of the files inside of it. So super cool, we got this working. I'm gonna go ahead and end the video here. Thanks for watching. This was Ryan Jones with Serverless Guru. I will see you next time.